I'm DJ.
And I'm Andrew.
Welcome to One Shots Tavern,
a TTRPG podcast where we seek out new ways to tell your stories through different systems and games. Welcome to part 2 of our ZineQuest series. Today, we are going to be talking about my project, Battle School. If you didn't hear our first part about ZineQuest, a short version is ZineQuest is a Kickstarter TTRPG design effort where they are pushing for people to launch a project in February for a small zine, bite-sized TTRPG piece of content. We are both participating. We encourage you to do the same, as well as check out the countless amazing projects that are listed there right now. Today,
Yeah, tell me about Battle School, Andrew.
yeah.
Because I've heard you talk about it a lot. I've heard you talk about the inspirations behind it. I've heard you all sorts of awesome stuff.
Well, you've
And
played bits of it.
bits of it. I was just about to get to that. So
Yeah.
tell me the rest of it.
Okay, so the short version for all our listeners at home, not just for you. I am working on a much bigger project called Entwine RPG. It is a system. I haven't decided if I'm going to do a full-on setting agnostic one that I release. Right now, what I did was I was working on that, and it was overwhelming to create a setting agnostic system that accounts for everything. Sounded strangely enough easier in my brain at first because I didn't have to make it a setting. I didn't have to make it super specific. No, you have to make it really, really specific, but in a lot of ways. And that was a lot of work and stressful and way too big of a scope for my first foray into self-publishing.
Like a puzzle piece that fits into every puzzle that you can possibly imagine.
No
It's
thanks.
the master puzzle piece.
It gave
This
me
is
a
his
lot
system.
of respect for Cypher. But let me talk briefly about Entwine, and then I'll talk about Battle School. Entwine, the core of it is about one word: relationship. Basically, it is the desire in me as a GM and a game designer for people at the table to push for collaboration. I don't want a player to get to their turn and just be thinking about themselves, their character, and how cool they are. I want them to be elevating one another, finding ways to, yes, still have amazing moments where they are the center of attention, but also like being able to create those moments together where they are like combo moving, their way through a battle where they are clearly deeply, deeply playing together.
Right.
That just doesn't happen terribly often in a lot of systems that I've played. And I'm hoping to be proven wrong by that, by our podcast as a whole about learning about other systems. But this project of Entwine is at its core about that. The core mechanic of it is the idea of team-based or collaborative DC setting. Okay, so if you don't know what a DC is, you probably do, but it's a difficulty class, aka the number you need to roll on the dice. There's a lot about this system that is shared with games like Cypher, but I feel like I've branched out quite a bit as well. The idea being, you and your team decide your actions during a planning phase prior to your individual turns. And when you declare your actions, they each come with a specific value. We sum those values up, and then we get a new value that is considered the team DC. And then that team DC is added to the GM's number, which is the encounter difficulty. And we get the actual DC that everybody on the entire team has to hit when they go to resolve their individual actions. The reason why, rather than just working on Entwine, I'm doing Battle School is I grew up with a favorite book, and that favorite book is shared by my wife, and we bonded over it early on in our dating.
Song of Ice and
And
Fire?
no, at that book will go unnamed. It will not be hard to deduce if you're familiar with any classic sci-fi coming of age novels about games. And I loved that book. So much so that it became an inspiration for this. I was talking to my wife about the system. I was talking about the issue that I was having with kind of feeling like I needed a setting to kind of root the system and try out the mechanics. Um, and she brought it up, and I was like, "That's incredible. I'm gonna do that." So Battle School is a military academy where students participate in war games in a large battle room, as well
Nice.
as attending classes and getting into social scuffles with bullies and all that kind of stuff. So in Battle School, you play as an 8 to 13-year-old, depending on where you want to land in that range, and you are part of a team. That team is like a little battle squad, part of a larger army at the school, a la kind of like houses or stuff like that from other popular fiction. The idea of getting kind of placed in a house is kind of core to it. But the table that you're playing with will all be a part of the same team, the same squad. That may evolve in the future, but that's how we're going right now. The idea being it's your adventuring party, right? It's your squad that goes into the battle room to perform actions and, maneuvers and, bouts of military prowess. Um, so you go to this space station. Your whole goal is to get good at space fighting, and eventually become a great commander or soldier in the grand military of Gorgon, which is a mega corporation from a setting that I've been running for quite some time. DJ's actually in my Cipher game that uses Gorgon as one of the many corporations, and they are a nasty mega corporation that sells their military off to the highest bidder to protect the worlds that deserve it
Yeah, they're
financially.
real annoying.
It's great. So you're a kid whose parents got paid handsomely. Part of it got set aside for you in a trust, but their parents got paid to send their kid off to military school to be trained and to, grow in the ranks of Gorgon. Um, so what we do with this game is you get the opportunity to, with your friends, pretend to be a kid, much like a lot of other popular games, like Kids on Bikes and stuff like that, where
Mhm.
you're getting to put yourself into the mindset of a young teen, a young adolescent in those formative coming of age moments and learn about teamwork and learn about collaboration and cooperation and creative problem solving. And it's broken down into three main forms of gameplay. You've got battle room, which is your traditional encounter. Um, you have classrooms, which is going to be a little bit different than what you might think. It's not like written tests and stuff like that. It's more like team projects. Again, core of the system, team based
Mid-session. All right,
stuff.
everybody, books away.
Get your number two pencils out. And then free time, which is basically your social environments, your lunchroom, your social spaces, the library, stuff like that. Um, So that's kind of the setting, a little bit of the mechanics, and why I'm doing it. I'm excited about this. I'm actually doing a playtest this weekend. Really getting it in front of people is going to be incredible. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Any more specific questions you want to go through?
Yeah, okay. How many players are you gearing for? Minimum and maximum.
So that's part of the playtest this weekend.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think at minimum you gotta have, like, 3 players and a GM.
Yeah, that makes sense, because like, otherwise, it's just 2 people making actions.
Now there is a rules
Yeah.
adjustment for what I'm calling low man encounters. So, that term comes from, like, raiding in some games, like, whenever you run an
Mhm.
activity without as many individuals that it's required for. So lone man encounters in this there's a DC adjustment for the GM to still be able to run it. Um kind of valuing each player at like an adjustment of 2. So basically it's like, "Hey, GM, increase your encounter difficulty by 2 if you have less than the recommended number of players for this." So there is a bit of an accounting for that. because then there's still some difficulty to every encounter, but it actually, I'm gonna have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
But I
Let's
think
see.
it could support up to 6 players. Um, it just requires more from the players at that point of, really thinking through what they're doing.
Right, because then you have to like fully plan out your action. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
gonna hit an unimaginable DC
Yep.
difficulty check for that action. So if you have 6 people, then like half of them are just gonna be doing basic actions just so they, feel like they're able to
Yeah.
succeed.
So for those of
For
you,
sure.
he's a little bit more familiar with how this system works, but the idea is there's kind of 2 classifications of actions. There's, standard actions and there's support actions, or I guess offensive actions and support actions. Um, Pretty much they modify the DC either positive or negative, right? So if one
Yep.
person chooses to perform the attack action, that's a modifier of 2, so the DC bumps up 2. And then somebody else could choose to provide the aid action, which is a -2. So they have now canceled each other out. And now you're just dealing with, if it was just 2 players in the GM, you're just dealing with the encounter difficulty now. So their
Right.
actions both are able to perform. One person's going to make an attack roll, the other person's going to perform an aid, which may require a roll in some cases. But they're both going to be rolling against only the encounter modifier, which could be 2 or 3. And then the only other thing, there's a lot of other nuances to it. The system is D6 based because I like D6s and I like rolling dice. Something that's really fun with this is I've got 2 main stats. I kept it real simple. In Entwine, I think I'm gonna change this, but I want it to be really simple for Battle School. There's 2 stats, brains and brawn. That's it. Um,
Right.
and they're really little numbers. It's 1 or 2. So basically you either have a 1 in brains or a 2 in brawn or vice versa.
You can
Um,
tell someone's been playing a lot of No Thank You Evil with their kid. Uh,
yep. And all the 1 or the 2 means is just how many d6s you roll on that associated stat. Um, you might say, "Oh, that sucks if I'm playing a bad at brawn character. Um, then how do I do anything about that?" Well, there is a pool that you have other than you have your brains and your brawn, which are not really pools, they're just your stats, right? Your number of dice that you
mhm,
roll. And then you have wounds, pretty straightforward. Damage that you take, it's like your HP. And then you have drive. The drive is, for those familiar with Cypher, that's your effort,
mhm.
but one drive is equal to a d6. So you can choose to use a drive to roll another d6 on something.
Okay,
Um,
kind of similar to like some of the pools from like Powered by the Apocalypse,
yeah, exactly.
or Empire the Masquerade. So
Yep.
really, when you're talking about this system, and you're talking about like, hey, this is going to be, pretty system agnostic. You've definitely kind of like pulled in a lot of mechanics that can be easily translated over to a D20 system or staying with
Yeah,
the D6 system
potentially.
or the D10
Um,
system.
I mean, at the end of
Yeah,
the day, Entwine is gonna be its own thing. I have
yeah.
written, a version of ship, encounters for Cypher, for example, that uses,
Yeah.
like, the baby version of this. But at its core, this is gonna wholly be its own thing. Battle School isn't written to run on another system right now. Um but you could learn a lot from it, and you could use a lot
Right.
of these principles. And the ways that you could do DC adjustments with collaborative DC setting, it's not hard to figure it out. And I'd encourage you to do so. I have not really written the D20 version of it. I'm sure I could if a lot of people want it. Um, but yeah, this isn't necessarily built to work on other systems right now.
Okay. Gotcha. Very cool. I am extremely excited to try it out this weekend. Um,
Yeah,
that'll be
and
a lot of fun to have more context apart from like the tests that you've done in Cypher and stuff and
yeah,
the things that I've used in some of my games to help refine that part. Um, I'm excited to see what is essentially your finished project or product or at least system for
yeah.
the product. So yeah.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I'm really curious about is, what kinda kid you're gonna play.
Mm,
I've
yeah.
got types kinda like, your classes for this, and, it's simply just the blank kid, and the blank, there's a couple that I've prescribed, which is the sporty kid, the scrappy kid, the hyper kid, the gifted kid, and the witty kid. So those are some of the kids that I've
Okay.
developed so far. Yeah, I'm interested to see what kid DJ's like in a game.
Yeah, it's gonna be terrible. I'm gonna be the fat kid stealing everyone's ice
I
cream.
don't have a rule set for the fat kid.
I'll make it myself.
Okay.
Homebrew.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the last thing you want on a playtest is homebrew.
That's really nice ice cream you got me there, bucko.
But yeah, if you are interested in learning more about this, I'm gonna be doing some dev streams here and there on our TikTok. That's basically gonna be me going through the process of talking through this project with people in the stream and getting ideas and workshopping things and kind of playtesting it right in front of you. So if you want to hop in, I had a blast doing it last time, and I'm sure I will again. So feel free to follow us over on TikTok, follow along, and wait for a live to pop up because it'll likely be me working on some game dev stuff, and maybe you'll get a little peek under the hood for your own game dev purposes.
Make sure you guys check out Andrew's project on ZineQuest for his Kickstarter. It's called Battle School. We're going to leave the link in the description of this video so it's easy for you to find. But yeah, the more support, the better, because that just means, more motivation to put out the best possible product we can. Well, he can.
Please check out both his project and mine over on ZineQuest. Links will be in the description. Also, I get to finally rep it. We've got merch. Coastal Mage
Yes,
Slayer. If you get it,
buy
you get
one.
it. Um, we
I'm
also
waiting for
have one
mine
for
still.
Magic Missile, and we also have a logo tee for the podcast as a whole. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to check us out over on Patreon. You're going to get access to the full length actual plays of the games that we're demoing. We've got a couple lined up. There's one that we're recording tonight that I'm very
Yeah.
excited about. And there's many more to come. So if you want to see us playing some games, check out our Patreon. You also get access to some other information early over there. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube, like, subscribe. That really does help. If you're able to
Yes.
also drop in over on Spotify and on Apple and give us a review. Tell us how we can be better. We want to know. We
Yeah.
actually want to make this
Follow us on
better.
TikTok if you haven't yet and watch a video all the way through. That's all you got to do on TikTok. It's really simple.